What's going on, everyone? It's Jim here. Today we're talking about study tips that will work for any PT course that you're taking. And we're going to be talking about why that's a big deal. So let's just get right into it. All right, so when we're talking about study tips that work for any course, it's pretty important because when you think about the fact that you're taking 30 or so different courses throughout PT school, depending on how your school breaks up that material into different courses, might be a few more than 30, might be a few less. But when you have approximately 30 different courses, not even counting the labs that you're taking for a lot of those courses, you need to think about ways that you can benefit from studying that work on a global scale for any of these courses. Now you're taking all these different courses, and again, when you think about the fact that you're kind of walking this academic tightrope all throughout PT school, you need to realize that, again, the study tips that work for any course, really critical because you can start to kind of fall behind, get a couple of, unacceptable grades in courses, and then you're either, at risk of decelerating in your program or having to even kind of, go on probation and get dismissed from the program. And you don't want any of that. So you just want, ways to study and optimize your time and your effectiveness for any course that you're in. Now, I do want to acknowledge the fact that every student's different and not everyone needs study tips. It's important to realize that you might have ways that just work perfectly for you, and that's fine. But other students might not, and that's why I'm just trying to help out with some really good universal tips for any course. And these aren't the only tips that there are, and so I'm interested in hearing what your tips or your insight might be for other people who might want more tips. So be sure to leave them in the comment section below, because I'm certainly not able to cover everything, and one thing that might work for me might not work for you or for another person. So leave a comment below as to what you feel is really important in case you think that I miss anything that's big and can be applied to any course. Now, I do have a blog post on this exact same topic, and I'll put that in the description box below in case that you're someone who just wants to read through the material and kind of get some more information that way. All right, so tip number 1, you need to know your learning style for the specific course that you're studying for. Every course in PT school might actually demand that you study a different way based on what it is that you're trying to learn. That's not necessarily universal for everyone, but what you might find is that a study method that works for one course might be a different kind of way that you need to study compared to another course. If we think about something like gross anatomy, when you study gross anatomy, and this is especially true with me, it's just all memorization. You memorize, you get to your exams, you regurgitate all of that information. Now, if you think about when you're studying for something like a practical examination for any of your skills courses or for any course where you're actually being evaluated, that might be a different way that you need to study. For me, for example, the best ways that I studied for those types of examinations was to actually physically, even just by myself, in my bedroom, in my apartment, to just go through the actual exam process and talk out loud and practice it that way. What I found is that worked much better for me than just kind of sitting down and just trying to memorize what I would do in those situations. Another example we can think about here is if you think about gross anatomy compared to a course like your functional anatomy or kinesiology class, where now you're actually kind of thinking about in those functional anatomy classes, you're thinking about how the anatomy moves, how it articulates, how it works. And again, when I was studying for something like that, as a personal example, I would actually go through a lot of these physical movements, and as I was doing that, I would start to visualize what was taking place and how that was happening. Again, I didn't do that with gross anatomy because with gross anatomy, it was just memorize it and know it for your exams. So think about how you might need to adapt your learning style or your studying style based on the individual course that you're taking. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but you might find that it's just going to be a different way of doing things for certain courses that you're taking. All right, tip number 2, as you go through each and every one of your courses, you need to continually ask yourself for that specific course, what is and what isn't working when it comes to your studying for that course. You need to continually optimize and refine the ways in which you go about studying and learning that material. It's kind of like that saying, improvise, adapt, and overcome. As you go through your courses, maybe everything's going fine. If you're not having any study issues and the material that you're covering, you're learning it and you're doing well, there's no need to change. You don't have to optimize or refine anything anymore. But if you're finding that you're struggling, it might be good to ask yourself, well, how can I improve my studying? Do I need to make it different right now? how do I shake it up to make it more effective? Here's a great example. So when I was doing gross anatomy, again, I actually used that studying where I would actually study with a lot of other individuals in my class. And that worked for me because I could sit there and I could study, and then if someone had a question or just wanted to quickly quiz me, not a problem. You can do that really easily because gross anatomy, I didn't have to learn concepts. I didn't have to think about taking a concept and applying it to a situation. And so what that meant was I actually found group studying for that more effective than not necessarily just studying by myself. I still would study by myself, but for that course, I just found it helpful to have other people around to study with. But if you compare that to a lot of other courses I took, I actually preferred to study more by myself for other courses. And again, it was just my way of optimizing and refining my study habits and my study methods for each course that I was taking. All right, tip number 3, make a regimented study plan for each and every semester that you're in. I call this being intentional with your studies. And while some semesters in PT school are more demanding, more time consuming than others, a regimented study plan is really, really important. Especially if you're someone, again, who feels that you have a hard time with time management, or you are finding material really challenging, you're having a hard time keeping up. This is a great tip that's going to come in really handy. When you make a regimented study plan, what you're doing is, again, you're making this schedule where you're saying, hey, for these times and that times and that times on this day and that day, I'm studying. You're spread pretty thin for time in PT school, and it's pretty easy to get distracted or to have things come up that interfere with that time that you had planned to study. Now, this tip is going to come in handy because when you have regimented schedules where you've blocked things off for each day for study time or time to get things done, you wind up giving yourself that freedom to say, hey, you know what, I have something planned here. I can't go out and do this, that. I have to get my studying done. And then when other distractions come in, you have that already blocked off on your calendar. Now, as a personal example, I'm someone who, when I studied, and I recommend this to a lot of people, is get your studying done early in the morning if you can. I did it where when I was studying, I would actually get up at 5 a.m. Monday to Friday, and I would go and I'd study in the computer lab on campus from about 6 a.m. until 8:30 when our first courses would begin. That worked really good for me because what I could do is I could make sure that I studied in quiet, no distractions around me, and then when it came time throughout the rest of the day to do other activities, I already had my studying all done. Now, even if you're doing really well in your courses, you're not having difficulty with understanding material, or again, you're not having difficulty with staying caught up, I liked studying in the morning because a lot of times what I would do is I would just review the material that we were going to go over in course for that day. What I liked about that was then I could start to see, okay, this concept that we're going to talk about today makes sense to me, great, this one does. Oh, hang on, that one I'm not quite sure on. So I would mark that down, and when it came time to being in the lectures, I would say, okay, that's the concept I had a problem with kind of learning earlier on my own. So I'm really going to focus in. I might raise my hand and ask a question on that, but that really helped me out. All right, tip number 4, repetition is the mother of all learning. I believe the Latin phrase is something like repetitio est mater studiorum. I probably butchered that, but I don't care. Because again, I want you to think about the concept of what that means. It's not this sexy study tip. It's not this study hack. It's just honest, kind of, straightforward ways of saying you have to just put in the time for a lot of the material that you're going to study and learn. You need to remember when it comes to studying, you got yourself into PT school, this is what you signed up for. Some courses, easy, not a problem. Some, you just got to put in a lot of time. And even when you've optimized the ways in which you've studied and you've built in your regimented study schedule for each day, it's still about just repping out the material, getting your nose into the material, dissecting it, breaking it down to make sure that you understand it how you need to. All right, tip number 5, use technology to your advantage. You're probably already doing this, but we're going to talk about it anyways because we have such amazing access this day and age to different technology online, a lot of it for free, a lot of it by great, established, trustworthy professionals that can really help you out with your studying. I've actually written a couple of blog posts on my website on this topic, so if you're interested in kind of knowing what these apps and websites are that I used a lot, that I found helpful, I'll put them in the description box below. Click on those links, it'll tell you all of the amazing stuff that I used to help me out while I was in school. All right, tip number 6, I believe this is the most important, most effective study tip that you can use for any of your PT courses, and I saved it for last because it's such a good tip to end on. Take advantage of your professor's open office hours throughout each and every semester. For any of your PT courses that you take, your professors are going to have open office hours posted somewhere, maybe on their office door or somewhere else, where they're actually available for you to go in and sit down and get help and get insight on concepts and material that you're covering. This is incredibly important, and I felt that in my time in PT school, not enough students, especially the ones who were struggling, used professors' office hours. And so even if you're not struggling, you can still use these office hours to your advantage. A lot of times what I would do is I would just go to my professors and I would say, hey, what do you feel is the most challenging concept or material for students in this particular course? And I would do this kind of at the start of the semester, just so I kind of had a heads up of what to expect, maybe where things would get more challenging or where I would start to have a little bit more need to put in study time on material for that course. A lot of times what you can also do, and this is something that I did as well, is I would just go in during these office hours to my professors and I would say, hey, I was looking at some of the material we're going to cover up ahead in another week or another 2 weeks, and I just want a little bit more information on, X, Y, Z, whatever it might be. And then again, now you're actually staying ahead of the game when it comes to the material you have to learn and cover. So just remember that these office hours are incredibly important to have, especially if you're already having a hard time with learning the material or staying up to speed throughout each and every one of these courses. Don't be afraid to go in there and ask for help. Again, professors get it, they understand, and you're paying a lot of money to be in PT school, so you need to make sure you're doing all that you can to do the best job possible while you're in school. All right, so those are the study tips for today. Now, if you have been in PT school or you are in PT school and you feel that there's some really powerful tips that I've actually left out, and there's plenty of amazing tips out there, please leave them in the comment section below, because maybe you can help other individuals who are getting ready for PT school or are going through school right now. Leave your comments below for what you feel might help them as well. That's it for today's video. Hopefully you guys got something beneficial and informative out of it. If you did, please hit the like and the subscribe button. That'll help me grow the channel and get more information out to everyone. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Hope you're doing well. We'll see you in the next video.